What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the Chosen Few channel. Today, we're going to be talking about the real water boy and the man who fought a bear. We're talking about the real water boy and the man who fought a bear. But first off, thank you guys for tuning in, and I hope everything is going great with your day. Now, let's get into this, family. To talk about this, I'm going to be taking you guys back to the slave narrative. And today, we're going to be looking at the Alabama slave narratives. And within the Alabama slave narratives, we're going to be looking at an ancestor who was named Uncle Tom Baker. Uncle Tom Baker, may your name live on forever and may your memory never die. Hotep. Now, Uncle Tom Baker was raised as a slave in Alabama, Perry County, Alabama, to be exact. And we're going to look at his story, and it's going to be interesting because within this story we're going to see a man who literally, an ancestor who literally fought a bear. So let's get into this, family. You know how I like to do it. So he starts off his narratives by saying, "Show, I recollects a lot about the slavery days," said Uncle Tom as he whittled shavings from a soft piece of white pine. "I lived on a plantation down in Perry County, and I remember a story about something that happened to me way back there." So he's telling about a story. So he says, "I was a water boy for 50 field hands that worked in the sun all day long, and I had to carry many a bucket from the spring that was one field over something. Most of them was working." So basically he's saying that he was a water boy that had to carry water from a spring in one area all the way to where the other slaves, the older men field hands, were working at. And what you're gonna have to understand, especially about slavery, when a young boy was born, for the most part up until the age of around 10 years old, they weren't really doing any work, any serious slavery work. They were being raised by the women. They were with the other children. A lot of times you will hear stories about young slaves playing with the children of the masters up into a certain age, because it was around like 9-10 years old, around 10 years old, when the male slave became around 10 years old. That's when they started to work, and their work was being the water boy. That's what I mean by the real water boy. They would carry the water for the men in the field. So they would leave from being raised by the women at around 10 years old, and then they would have to go out into the fields with the men and the work hands, and as they work, they would be out there bringing water back and forth so the men could continue to work. The real water boy. So let's continue, family. He says the spring run down between some willow trees, and it was a powerful cord down there in the shade. Now he goes on to talk about when he would do this. Like you can imagine, they would not need him to get water every single second. So he would talk about laying down in the grass on his belly and resting for a little bit. But he does says that quite often, as soon as he'll get real comfortable, they'll yell, "Hey, water boy," and make him go get some more water. Look at this. Check this out, family. He says, "I used to lie on the moss and let my bare belly get cool and put my face in the outlet of the spring and let the water trickle over my hand. Just about the time I gets a little rest, one of them niggers would call, 'Water boy, bring that bucket.' Then I grab up the bucket and run back out in the hot sun." Now check this out, family. He says, "One day on my last trip, I was mighty tired, and I flopped down on the moss with the sweat a dripping from my body. And before I knowed it, I done fell fast asleep. When I woke up, it was almost dark, and I couldn't hear the slaves a singing in the fields, so I know that they had gone home." So he's saying he's out there in the fields one day, and after he carried his last bucket of water, he fell down like he normally do in the grass to get some rest, but he fell asleep. And this time he sleeps too long. He sleeps until till it's almost dark, and until it was dark, and then the field hands had already left. Like the older male slave, they had already left from the work, and they had went back to the plantation, and he realizes that he's still out there. So he says, I shake my head and look about me, and my eyes came to rest on a little black bear cub a drinking out the spring. He was a cute little booger, and I made up my mind right then to try and catch him. I was just a little nigger about 10 years old and didn't have no sense. Check this out, family. Remember, I told you around 10 years old, that's when you are the water boy around that age. And he just confirms it further on in this slave narrative. Now, check this out. Before I read this particular slave narrative, I was doing research on slavery in Alabama because I actually have an ancestor that, and he was in Alabama, so I wanted to research the conditions in Alabama, and I had read that around 10 years old they would actually be the water boy. And when I read this story confirmed in this slave narrative, it was like, okay, this is actual historical evidence primary to the claim that I, had read somewhere on the internet, but check this out. You see how he says that while he's out there, he sees a little bear cub, and the little bear cub is cute, so he wants to get it. I think y'all know where this is going because the title says The Real Water Boy and the Man Who Fought a Bear. Let's keep going, family. I was just a little nigger, about 10 years old, and didn't have no sense. But I sure wanted that little bear. He ain't seen me a sitting there, so I snuck up real cautious like. And before he knowed it, I had that little devil a squealing in my hands. So he picks up this little bear cub. This little bear cub goes crazy, starts squealing. You can imagine. And we all know who the little bear cub was squealing for. I know it, you know it, and he's about to find out. I was just about to start home with him, the bear cub, when I hears a rustling in the bushes. And before I went 10 feet, here come a big black bear a-lopping along right out them willow trees. I dropped that little critter because I know that was his mama, and she was raving mad. When I let that little fella fall, it must have hurt him something awful because he howled more than ever and went a-limping up to his mama. Well, so that old woman, she got so mad, she made for me like 2 bolts of lightning. But there's his 10 feet of mine began a doing their stuff. So he says the mama bear charges him and his 2 feet start doing their stuff. He takes off running in the other direction. So now you have a 10-year-old boy out here in the woods. He's just disrupted or agitated or hurt a baby cub. The mother is there. The mother is enraged. We all know what an enraged mother bear will and can do within the blink of an eye. Maul, murder, mayhem. What is this 12-year-old going to do? The real water boy and the man who fought a bear. May your name live on forever and may your memory never die. I'm telling you, the story of our ancestors, man, is real. We are our ancestors. Y'all need to know this. Subscribe to the channel. Share this. People need to know this information. I'm the real bookworm for a reason. So anyway, he says, I know she was a gaining on me, so I let out a whoop for help. She chased me across that empty field, and by that time I seen Big Jim a-coming through a row of corn. Hurry, Big Jim, I calls. A bear is after me. Big Jim was the biggest nigger on our place. He must have weighed as much as a half a bale of cotton. I was just about getting to the edge of the corn when that bear catch me. So now he's running, he's yelling. The male enslaved Africans, they hear him. Big Jim, the biggest one on the plantation, here he's being chased out by a bear. He immediately runs in that direction. Shout out to Big Jim, man. Shout out to Big Jim. Big Jim was a soldier. Big Jim was a warrior. Big Jim heard the little 10-year-old being chased by a crazy mama bear. He sprung into action. He ain't run to go get help. He was the help. May your name live on forever and may your memory never die. May we all be Big Jim if we ever in Big Jim's shoes. We are our ancestors. He goes on to say, when the bear catched him, the 10-year-old, he gave me a slap with his paw, and I goes down with my mouth to scooping up the dust. My back felt like somebody done put a hot iron on it. That bear was a mean one. I was expecting her to chew me up, and I drew my body up in a knot and covered my head with my hands and waited. So he falls up in a fetal position and awaits death. but that bear never touched me again. I kinda snuck my eye around and I saw Big Jim having it out with her. So Big Jim runs up and gets into a hand-to-hand combat with an enraged Mama Bear for Uncle Tom Baker. May both of y'all names live on forever and may your memories never die. The real bookworm for a reason. He goes on to say, Jim had a long knife and they was a tumbling and a rolling in the dust. They getting it in, family. While I sat there with my eyes a popping out of my head and my back feeling like it was broke, Jim, he wrapped his legs round that bear, and before you knowed it, he had stuck that old critter a dozen times with that knife. So Big Jim and the bear, they rolling around, they tussling. Excuse me, they tussling, the bear clawing at him, biting at him, Jim stabbing him, punching him, pushing him, they pushing and pulling. It's a fight to the death. They know it's a fight to the death. Somebody gotta go, so he say, Big Jim, like, you wrap his legs around the back and just get to hitting him with that knife. So he goes on to say, about 15 minutes later, Big Jim, man, me and Jim was a walking through the cornfield, and I guess we looked a sight because I was all tore up. And Jim, he looked like he done messed up with a family of wildcats. He was bleeding from head to foot. When he walked into the big house to get some treatments and medicine for our hurts, somebody was standing there. When she seen me and Jim, she almost faint. She say, what done happened to my niggas? After me and Jim got fixed up, I was just as happy because I done seen the best fight there ever was, and I had me a little orphan bear cub. And so now he actually had the bear cub. I know he didn't keep it, but it looks like here he actually, at the end of it, he says, I seen the best fight there ever was, and I had me a little orphan bear cub. So this guy goes out there, tries to take a little bear cub and rages. The mama almost gets killed. Big Jim comes out of nowhere, saves the day. And that was an orphan bear cub that they took in. And who knows what they did with that bear. Probably made something out of his fur. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed that story. Uncle Tom Baker, the real water boy and the man who fought a bear. Thank you guys for tuning in. This your brother Matthew Daniels, aka I'm Pooh, aka the Chosen Few, aka the real bookworm. But I'm not just a bookworm, world. I'm the real bookworm. Make sure you get it right. And as always, may your name live on forever, and may your memory family, never die.